The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Kensington Palace, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. Catherine sat quietly in her private study, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had long since grown cold. The newspaper lay folded beside her, its headlines screaming about Harry's latest television interview that had aired the previous evening. She hadn't slept well, her mind racing with worry about what this would mean for her children. William paced the length of their drawing room, his phone buzzing incessantly with calls from palace staff, media advisors, and family members. Each ring seemed to add another layer of tension to his already strained expression. He had watched the interview live, sitting in stunned silence as his younger brother revealed intimate family details to millions of viewers worldwide. The weight of responsibility he felt as the future king pressed heavily on his shoulders, but it was his role as a father that concerned him most. "The children will hear about this at school," Catherine said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She thought about George, who at 13 was becoming increasingly aware of his family's public role. Charlotte, 11, with her sharp intelligence and protective nature toward her younger brother. And Louis, only 8 but already showing signs of understanding that his family was different from others. William stopped pacing and turned to face his wife. Her usually composed demeanor showed cracks of vulnerability that few people ever witnessed. "We need to talk to them before someone else does," he said, running a hand through his hair. "They deserve to hear it from us, not from classmates or social media." The morning had started like any other. The children had eaten breakfast together, chattering about their upcoming school projects and weekend plans. George had mentioned a football match he was excited about, while Charlotte discussed her art assignment. Louis had been more interested in the new book series he was reading, eagerly sharing details about dragons and magical kingdoms. The normalcy of their conversation now felt like a precious memory, something that might be harder to maintain going forward. Catherine rose from her chair and moved to the window, watching the security detail patrol the grounds. "Harry mentioned the children specifically," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "He talked about how they might never have a relationship with their cousins. How can we explain that to them? How do we help them understand something we're still struggling to comprehend ourselves?" The interview had been particularly painful because it touched on topics that affected not just William and Catherine's immediate family, but the entire institution they were part of. Harry had spoken candidly about his feelings of isolation within the royal family, his struggles with mental health, and his decision to step back from royal duties. While Catherine understood his pain, she couldn't help but feel that airing these private matters publicly would have lasting consequences for everyone involved, especially the children. William joined his wife at the window, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "We'll protect them," he said firmly. "We'll be honest about what they need to know, age-appropriately, and we'll make sure they understand that family love doesn't disappear just because people disagree or live far apart." The palace staff had been in crisis mode since the early hours of the morning. Press secretaries were fielding calls from journalists around the world, each wanting a statement or reaction from the Prince and Princess of Wales. The children's security detail had been increased, and their school had been notified to be extra vigilant about protecting their privacy. These were precautions that reminded Catherine and William of their unique position in the world, and the constant balancing act between public duty and private family life. "I keep thinking about what Harry said about feeling trapped," Catherine admitted. "I worry that George might start feeling that pressure too. He's already so aware of his future role, and now this, it might make everything feel more overwhelming for him." George had always been a thoughtful child, perhaps too thoughtful for someone his age. He understood that he would one day be king, a concept that seemed almost mythical but was becoming more real as he grew older. Catherine and William had worked hard to give him a childhood that felt as normal as possible while preparing him for his eventual responsibilities. Harry's public statements about the constraints of royal life threatened to complicate the delicate balance. The couple spent the morning in quiet discussion, planning how to approach their children when they returned from school. They decided to have individual conversations with each child, tailored to their age and emotional maturity. George would need the most detailed explanation, as he was old enough to understand the complexities of family dynamics and public expectations. Charlotte would need reassurance that her family remained strong and united, despite the challenges they were facing. Louis would require the most careful handling, as his young mind might struggle to process why his uncle, whom he loved, was saying things that seemed to upset his parents. As the day progressed, Catherine found herself remembering happier times when the extended family had been together. Christmas mornings at Sandringham when all the cousins played together, summer afternoons when Harry would join them for casual family barbecues, and the easy camaraderie that had once existed between the brothers. Those memories felt distant now, replaced by formal communications through staff and careful public statements that revealed nothing of the personal pain underneath. "We need to be prepared for questions from the media," William said during their lunch, though neither of them had much appetite. "The children might see news vans or photographers when we're out and about. We should explain why there might be more attention than usual." Catherine nodded, thinking about the inevitable intrusion that would follow such a high-profile interview. They had always worked hard to maintain boundaries around their children's privacy, but events like this made those boundaries more difficult to maintain. The public's fascination with royal drama often overshadowed the real people affected by it, including 3 innocent children who simply wanted to love their family without the complications of public scrutiny. The afternoon brought a steady stream of meetings with palace advisors, each session adding another layer of complexity to their situation. There were discussions about public statements, future family events, and the delicate matter of maintaining relationships while protecting their children's well-being. Catherine felt exhausted by the political maneuvering required, when all she really wanted was to ensure her children felt secure and loved. William's phone rang again, and this time it was his father. The conversation was brief but intense, and Catherine could see the strain on her husband's face as he listened to King Charles's concerns about family unity and public perception. The monarchy had weathered many storms throughout history, but each crisis felt intensely personal when it involved people you loved. As the school day ended, Catherine and William prepared themselves for what might be one of the most difficult conversations they would ever have with their children. They had faced many challenges as parents, from explaining the loss of great-grandmother Queen Elizabeth to helping the children understand their unique role in society. This felt different, more personal and, potentially more damaging to the family bonds they had worked so hard to nurture. "Whatever happens," Catherine said to William as they heard the children's voices in the hallway, "we face it together. We protect them together. And we make sure they know that they are loved, no matter what anyone else says or does." William squeezed her hand, drawing strength from her resolve. They were about to enter uncharted territory as parents, but they would do so as a united front, determined to shield their children from the worst effects of public family discord while remaining honest about the realities they all faced. The sound of footsteps approaching their door signaled that their most important work as parents was about to begin. In a few moments, they would look into the trusting eyes of their children and find a way to explain the unexplainable, to provide comfort in the face of uncertainty, and to reinforce the bonds of love that no interview, no matter how revealing or painful, could truly break. The evening ahead would test every parenting skill they possessed, but Catherine and William were determined to emerge from it with their family stronger and more united than ever. Their children deserved nothing less than their complete dedication to protecting both their innocence and their understanding of the complex world they were born into. The sound of car doors closing in the palace courtyard announced the children's return from school. Catherine felt her heart rate quicken as she heard their familiar voices echoing through the corridors, mixed with the usual chatter about homework, friends, and the day's events. George's deeper voice carried over his siblings, discussing something about a science experiment, while Charlotte's animated tone suggested she was recounting a story from her literature class. Louis's excited squeals about a playground game provided a soundtrack of childhood innocence that made what they were about to do feel even more difficult. William straightened his tie nervously, a habit Catherine had noticed whenever he was preparing for particularly challenging conversations. They had decided to speak with George first, given his age and the likelihood that he might have already heard whispers about his uncle's interview from classmates or overheard conversations among school staff. The weight of being the eldest child in such a public family meant that George often carried burdens that his younger siblings were still protected from. "Mummy! Papa!" Louis's voice rang out as he burst through the door, his school uniform slightly disheveled and his face bright with the joy that only an 8-year-old could maintain after a full day of learning and playing. He rushed toward them with the unguarded affection that Catherine treasured, wrapping his arms around her waist and looking up with eyes that held no knowledge of the storm surrounding their family. Charlotte followed more sedately, her backpack slung over one shoulder and a thoughtful expression on her face that reminded Catherine so much of William at that age. "Why does everyone look so serious?" she asked, her natural perceptiveness picking up on the tension in the room despite their attempts to appear normal. George entered last, and Catherine's heart clenched as she noticed the slight hesitation in his step. At 13, he was becoming increasingly aware of the subtle changes in atmosphere that accompanied family crises. His eyes moved between his parents' faces, reading the careful composure they were maintaining and understanding that something significant was happening. "We wanted to talk with you all about something important," William began, settling into his chair and gesturing for the children to join them. Catherine arranged herself on the sofa, creating a circle that felt both intimate and serious. "You might hear some things at school or see things in the news about Uncle Harry, and we wanted you to hear about it from us first." Louis climbed onto Catherine's lap without hesitation, his trust absolute and his curiosity mild. Charlotte sat cross-legged on the floor, her attention focused entirely on her parents in the way that indicated she understood this was more than a routine family discussion. George remained standing for a moment before taking a seat in the chair across from them, his posture mirroring his father's unconscious formality. "Uncle Harry gave an interview on television," Catherine explained gently. "He talked about our family and some of the challenges he's been facing. Some of what he said might be confusing or upsetting to hear, especially if you don't understand the whole situation." "What kind of challenges?" Charlotte asked, her voice smaller than usual. Catherine could see her daughter's mind working, trying to piece together information from overheard conversations and subtle changes in the household routine over the past few months. William leaned forward, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes adults and families disagree about important things, just like you and your siblings sometimes have disagreements. The difference is that when adults disagree, especially in our family, it can be more complicated because so many people are watching and interested in what we do." George's jaw tightened slightly, a gesture Catherine recognized as his way of processing difficult information. "Did he say bad things about us?" he asked, and the directness of the question caught both parents off guard. "He shared his feelings about some difficult times our family has gone through," Catherine said, reaching out to touch George's hand. "Some of what he said was about his own struggles, and some of it was about relationships within our family. We want you to know that even when adults have disagreements, it doesn't mean they stop loving each other." The room fell quiet as the children absorbed this information. Catherine could see different levels of understanding cross their faces. Louis seemed relatively unaffected, more interested in playing with the buttons on her cardigan than deeply processing the conversation. Charlotte looked worried, her natural empathy making her sensitive to the emotional undercurrents she couldn't fully grasp. George appeared to be thinking deeply, his expression serious beyond his years. "Will we still see Uncle Harry?" Louis asked suddenly, his question cutting through the tension with typical childhood directness. William and Catherine exchanged a glance, both recognizing this as one of the questions they had most dreaded. "Uncle Harry lives very far away now," William said carefully. "And sometimes when adults need time to work through their disagreements, they don't see each other as often as they used to. But he's still our uncle," Charlotte said firmly, as if stating this fact could somehow protect the relationship from whatever adult complications were threatening it. "Yes," Catherine confirmed, her voice warm with the love she felt for her daughter's loyalty. "He will always be your uncle, and he will always love you very much. Sometimes love looks different than we expect it to, especially when people are going through difficult times." George had been quiet throughout this exchange, but now he spoke up with a question that revealed how much he had been thinking about their family's unique position. "Is this going to make things harder for us? Will people treat us differently at school?" Catherine felt her heart break a little at the maturity forced upon her eldest son. "We've spoken with your teachers and the security team to make sure you continue to feel safe and comfortable at school," she said. "If anyone says anything that upsets you or if you hear things that don't make sense, we want you to come talk to us right away." "What if they ask us questions?" Charlotte wanted to know, and Catherine could see her daughter already preparing herself to defend her family against criticism she didn't yet understand. "You don't have to answer questions about our family from anyone outside of it," William said firmly. "Your teachers know to help you if anyone makes you uncomfortable, and you can always tell people that your family's private matters are not something you discuss at school. The conversation continued for another hour, with each child asking questions appropriate to their age and understanding. Catherine and William answered honestly but carefully, providing enough information to prepare their children without overwhelming them with adult complexities they weren't ready to handle. They emphasized the unchanging love within their immediate family, the security of their home, and the support system that surrounded them. As the evening progressed, they moved from the formal sitting room to the family kitchen, where Catherine began preparing dinner while maintaining the conversation. The familiar routine of meal preparation seemed to provide comfort to all of them, creating a sense of normalcy amid the unusual circumstances. Louis helped set the table, chattering about his day and seeming to have moved past the serious discussion. Charlotte remained quieter than usual, but she stayed close to her parents, seeking reassurance through proximity. George volunteered to help with the cooking, an unusual offer that Catherine recognized as his way of staying connected to the conversation while processing what he had learned. As he chopped vegetables beside her, he asked more specific questions about Uncle Harry's situation and the media attention their family constantly navigated. "Do you ever wish we were just a normal family?" George asked quietly, his voice barely audible over the sizzling of onions in the pan. Catherine paused in her stirring, considering her answer carefully. "There are times when the attention and the expectations feel overwhelming," she admitted. "But I love our family exactly as it is, and I love the good we're able to do because of our position. The challenges are real, but so are the opportunities we have to help people and make a difference. I worry sometimes that I won't be good enough," George confessed, and Catherine felt tears prick her eyes at the weight her young son was already carrying. "You are already more than good enough," she said, turning to face him fully. "You're kind, thoughtful, and caring. Those are the most important qualities for anyone, whether they're going to be king or not. Everything else will help you learn when you're ready." William, who had been listening from across the kitchen while helping Charlotte with her homework, joined the conversation. "Your Uncle Harry was feeling overwhelmed by some of these same feelings," he said. "That doesn't excuse everything he said, but it helps us understand why he needed to make different choices for his life." Dinner was a quieter affair than usual, but it felt more connected somehow. The children seemed to sense that their parents had shared something important with them, treating them with more maturity than usual. They asked fewer questions but offered more observations about their day, seeming to understand that normal family conversation was especially precious given the circumstances. After dinner, as they moved through their evening routines, Catherine noticed small changes in each child's behavior. Louis stayed closer to his parents than usual, seeking extra hugs and reassurance. Charlotte was more protective of Louis, helping him with his bedtime routine without being asked. George took more responsibility for household tasks, as if trying to prove his capability and support his parents during a difficult time. As they tucked each child into bed, Catherine and William provided additional reassurances tailored to each personality. They reminded Louis that he was safe and loved, helped Charlotte process her worries about family harmony, and gave George additional perspective on handling public attention and family expectations. The day had been emotionally exhausting for all of them, but Catherine felt proud of how they had navigated it as a family. The children had shown remarkable maturity and resilience, and she and William had managed to be honest without destroying their children's sense of security. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as the media coverage continued and the public reaction evolved, but tonight their family felt strong and united. Standing in the hallway outside their children's rooms, Catherine and William held each other close, drawing strength from their partnership and their shared commitment to protecting their family. The road ahead remained uncertain, but they had taken the first difficult step together, and that gave them hope for whatever challenges lay ahead. The following morning brought an intensity of media coverage that even William and Catherine, veterans of public scrutiny, found overwhelming. News vans lined the streets outside the palace gates, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky like mechanical sunflowers seeking attention rather than light. Photographers with telephoto lenses positioned themselves at every possible vantage point, hoping to capture a glimpse of the family's reaction to the ongoing fallout from Harry's interview. Catherine stood at her bedroom window, watching the controlled chaos below while sipping her morning tea. The children were still sleeping, blissfully unaware of the circus that had assembled outside their home overnight. She had woken before dawn, her mind racing with concerns about how to maintain some semblance of normalcy for George, Charlotte, and Louis when the entire world seemed fixated on their family's private pain. William emerged from his dressing room, already dressed for the day in a navy suit that suggested he had early meetings scheduled. His phone had been buzzing incessantly since 5 in the morning with calls from palace staff, government officials, and family members all weighing in on the crisis management strategies being discussed. The weight of representing not just his own family, but the entire institution of the monarchy, showed in the tension around his eyes. "The children's school has requested that we use the rear entrance today," William reported, scrolling through messages from their security detail. "They've also assigned additional staff to monitor social media and prevent any inappropriate content from reaching the students during school hours." Catherine nodded, grateful for the school's proactive approach but saddened that such measures were necessary. She thought about other families facing difficult times, families who could process their challenges in private without the whole world watching and commenting. The public nature of their situation added layers of complexity to what was already an emotionally challenging experience. "George asked me last night if Uncle Harry still loves us," Catherine said quietly. "I told him yes, but I could see he was struggling to understand how love and public criticism can exist simultaneously." The question had haunted Catherine through the sleepless hours before dawn. How do you explain to a 13-year-old that someone can love you while also saying things that feel hurtful or damaging? How do you help children understand that adult relationships can be complicated in ways that don't always make logical sense? William joined her at the window, and together they watched the media encampment below. "We'll need to cancel this weekend's planned public engagement," he said. The children were looking forward to the charity event, but with this level of attention, "They'll be disappointed," Catherine replied, thinking particularly of Charlotte, who had been excited about meeting the young artists whose work they were scheduled to support. "But you're right. We can't expose them to this feeding frenzy." The morning routine began earlier than usual, with Catherine and William working to create a sense of calm normalcy despite the extraordinary circumstances surrounding them. They prepared breakfast together while discussing the day's modified schedule, speaking in the coded language that parents develop when they need to communicate adult concerns without alarming listening children. Louis was the first to appear in the kitchen, his hair tousled from sleep and his favorite stuffed dragon tucked under one arm. At 8, he possessed an remarkable ability to live entirely in the present moment, and he seemed genuinely unaware of the tension that had settled over the household. He chattered happily about a dream he had experienced, involving flying horses and magical castles, providing a soundtrack of innocence that both parents desperately needed. Charlotte followed soon after, already dressed and with her hair neatly braided. She had always been the most organized of their children, but this morning her efficiency seemed heightened, as if she was trying to be extra helpful during what she sensed was a difficult time. She quietly set the table and helped Louis with his breakfast, taking on a caretaking role that reminded Catherine of herself at that age. George appeared last, moving with the careful deliberation of someone who has spent considerable time thinking during the night. Catherine could see questions in his eyes, and she suspected that their conversation the previous evening had prompted him to piece together fragments of overheard conversations and half-understood news reports into a fuller picture of their family's situation. "Will we be going to school the normal way today?" George asked, and Catherine recognized this as his tactful way of asking whether the media attention had reached a level that required security modifications to their routine. "We'll be using a different entrance," William explained matter-of-factly. "Just as a precaution while there's extra interest in our family." Charlotte looked up from her cereal with concern. "Is it because of what Uncle Harry said?" Catherine exchanged a glance with William before answering. "Yes, sweetheart. When someone in our family gives an interview like Uncle Harry did, it creates a lot of public interest, and we need to be extra careful about privacy and safety. I don't understand why everyone cares so much about what adults and families say to each other," Louis said, his 8-year-old logic cutting through the complexity with startling clarity. William smiled at his youngest son's observation. "You're right that it might seem strange," he said. "But, because our family has a special role in the country, people are very interested in everything we do and say, even things that would normally be private." As they finished breakfast, Catherine noticed that each child was processing the situation differently. Louis remained largely unaffected, still excited about a class project involving Egyptian pyramids. Charlotte was more subdued, clearly worried about the family dynamics she couldn't fully understand. George was observant and thoughtful, asking careful questions that revealed his growing awareness of the complexities of their public life. The journey to school required coordination with security teams and careful timing to avoid the heaviest concentration of media attention. Catherine sat with the children in the back of their vehicle, maintaining cheerful conversation about their day ahead while privately marveling at their resilience. They had adapted to the modified routine without complaint, accepting the extraordinary as if it were perfectly ordinary. After dropping the children at school, Catherine and William returned to the palace for a series of meetings that would consume most of their day. Palace communications staff briefed them on media coverage from around the world, showing them headlines in dozens of languages and analyzing public reaction across various platforms. The global fascination with their family crisis felt overwhelming and invasive. "The children's names are trending on social media," reported their press secretary, a capable woman who had managed royal communications for over a decade. "We're monitoring all platforms and working to have inappropriate content removed, but the volume of discussion is unprecedented." Catherine felt sick thinking about strangers around the world discussing her children, speculating about their feelings, and offering opinions about their family relationships. She had known when she married William that her children would never have completely private lives, but the intensity of interest during family crises still caught her off guard. "We need to consider how to address this publicly," William said, his voice heavy with the responsibility of protecting both his immediate family and the broader institution they represented. "If we say nothing, speculation will continue. If we say too much, we risk escalating the situation." The afternoon brought calls from other royal family members, each offering support while also expressing their own concerns about the situation's impact on the monarchy's reputation. Catherine listened to these conversations with a mixture of gratitude and frustration, appreciating the solidarity while wishing that the focus could remain on the human cost rather than the political implications. King Charles called personally to check on his grandchildren, his voice warm with genuine concern for their well-being. Catherine could hear the pain in her father-in-law's voice as he navigated his dual role as grandfather and sovereign, wanting to protect his grandchildren while also managing a constitutional crisis. "The children are remarkably resilient," Catherine assured him. "We're being very careful about what information they receive and how we present it. They're asking good questions and showing incredible maturity." When it came time to collect the children from school, Catherine and William were relieved to hear that their day had passed without major incident. The school's careful management had protected them from most of the external drama, allowing them to focus on their studies and friendships. However, each child had experienced small reminders of their family's unique situation. George reported that his history teacher had made a point of discussing the importance of primary sources versus media interpretation, a lesson clearly designed to help students think critically about news coverage. Charlotte mentioned that several classmates had asked her questions about her uncle, but that she had followed her parents' advice about maintaining privacy. Louis seemed completely unaware that anything unusual had happened, regaling them with detailed descriptions of his art project and playground games. That evening, as they gathered for dinner, Catherine and William made a conscious effort to focus on normal family conversation. They asked about homework assignments, listened to stories about friends and teachers, and discussed plans for the upcoming weekend, even though those plans would likely need significant modification. "Can we still have our movie night on Friday?" Charlotte asked, referring to their weekly tradition of watching films together as a family. "Absolutely," Catherine said firmly. "Some things are too important to change, no matter what else is happening." The children seemed to take comfort in this assurance that their core family traditions would continue despite the external chaos. Catherine and William had learned through years of navigating public life that maintaining private family rituals was essential for providing stability and normalcy for their children. As they prepared for bed, each child approached the day's events differently in their bedtime conversations. Louis wanted to know if the photographers outside were there to take pictures of him, and seemed disappointed to learn that they were more interested in the adults. Charlotte asked more sophisticated questions about why people were so interested in their family's private matters. George wanted to discuss the responsibility he felt to represent his family well, even when he didn't understand all the adult complexities involved. Catherine and William spent extra time with each child that evening, providing individual attention and reassurance tailored to their specific concerns and personality. They emphasized the strength of their family unit, the love that connected them all, and the confidence they had in each child's ability to navigate challenging situations with grace and integrity. Later, as they finally had a few moments alone together, Catherine and William reflected on their children's remarkable adaptability and strength. The day had tested their family in ways they hadn't anticipated, but they had emerged with their bonds intact and their children's trust preserved. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight they felt proud of how they were protecting what mattered most while still fulfilling their public responsibilities. 3 weeks had passed since Harry's interview aired, and the initial media frenzy had begun to settle into a more manageable rhythm of ongoing coverage. Catherine stood in her private garden, watching Louis and Charlotte play an elaborate game involving garden gnomes and an imaginary kingdom they had created together. Their laughter carried across the manicured lawns, a sound that had become even more precious to her after the recent weeks of uncertainty and tension. The children had proven to be remarkably resilient, adapting to the new normal with the flexibility that seemed to be their superpower. They had learned to navigate increased security measures, modified routines, and occasional bursts of renewed media attention with grace that often surprised their parents. Catherine marveled at their ability to compartmentalize the external chaos while maintaining their essential childhood joy and curiosity. George approached from the direction of the palace, his school bag slung over his shoulder and an expression of quiet confidence on his face that hadn't been there a month ago. At 13, he had shouldered the responsibility of being the eldest during the family crisis with a maturity that both impressed and worried Catherine. She had watched him grow up significantly in recent weeks, gaining understanding about his family's unique position while somehow maintaining his fundamental optimism about his future role. Mrs. Henderson wants to know if I can give a presentation about constitutional monarchy for our government class, George said, settling onto the garden bench beside his mother. She said it might help other students understand the difference between what they see in the news and how our system actually works. Catherine considered this request carefully. On one hand, it represented an opportunity for George to take control of his narrative and educate his peers about the realities of his family's role. On the other hand, it would put him in a position of having to defend or explain recent events in ways that might be challenging for someone his age. What do you think about doing that? Catherine asked, genuinely curious about her son's perspective. I think I'd like to try, George replied thoughtfully. Some of my classmates have been asking questions, and I've realized that a lot of what they think they know comes from movies and news stories that don't really explain how everything works. Maybe if I can help them understand the real job we do, they'll understand better why some things are complicated. Catherine felt a surge of pride at her son's thoughtful approach to a challenging situation. He was learning to use education and understanding as tools for managing public perception, skills that would serve him well throughout his life. She also appreciated his desire to take an active role in shaping how others viewed his family rather than simply accepting whatever narratives emerged from external sources. William emerged from the palace, looking more relaxed than he had in weeks. The crisis management phase had largely ended, replaced by the ongoing work of rebuilding and moving forward. He had spent the morning in meetings with charitable organizations, focusing on the positive work that continued regardless of family drama. Catherine could see that returning to their purpose-driven activities had been healing for him. Papa! Louis called from across the garden, abandoning his game to run toward his father with the boundless energy that characterized his approach to life. Charlotte and I have decided that our kingdom needs a visiting diplomat, and you're perfect for the job. William allowed himself to be dragged into the elaborate pretend scenario, playing his assigned role with the enthusiasm that had always made him a wonderful father. Catherine watched this interaction with deep appreciation for the way their family had learned to protect and prioritize these moments of simple joy amid their complex public existence. Charlotte approached more sedately, but her face lit up with genuine happiness at seeing both her parents relaxed and available for play. At 11, she had been particularly sensitive to the emotional undercurrents of the past few weeks, often positioning herself as a bridge between her younger and older brothers while also processing her own concerns about family harmony. We've been thinking, Charlotte said, settling on the ground near Catherine's feet, about Uncle Harry and whether he might want to visit our kingdom sometime. In our game, I mean, but also maybe in real life. The innocent hopefulness in her daughter's voice touched Catherine deeply. Despite everything that had happened, Charlotte maintained her belief in the possibility of reconciliation and healing within their extended family. Her capacity for optimism in the face of adult complexity reminded Catherine of the importance of protecting that hope while also being realistic about the challenges they faced. I think Uncle Harry would love to know that you've created a magical kingdom and that you think about including him in it, Catherine said carefully. Right now, he's very far away and dealing with his own challenges, but the love you feel for him and that he feels for you doesn't disappear just because grown-ups have disagreements. As the afternoon progressed, the family gradually transitioned from outdoor play to their evening routines, but the lightness of mood persisted. Dinner conversation flowed naturally between school projects, weekend plans, and the children's ongoing observations about their expanded understanding of their public role. Catherine noticed that each child had found ways to integrate their recent experiences into their developing sense of identity. "I've been thinking about what it means to be royal," George said during dessert, his tone suggesting this was a topic he had been considering seriously. "I used to think it was mostly about ceremonies and public appearances, but now I understand that it's really about service and helping people understand how our country works." Charlotte nodded enthusiastically. "And it's about showing people that families can work through difficult times and still love each other," she added, revealing her own processing of recent events. Louis, not to be left out of the philosophical discussion, contributed his own 8-year-old wisdom. "I think being royal means being extra kind to people because they're watching to see how we behave," he said, summarizing complex concepts with startling clarity. William and Catherine exchanged glances across the dinner table, both recognizing the profound growth their children had experienced during these challenging weeks. They had emerged with deeper understanding, stronger family bonds, and more sophisticated thinking about their roles in the world. The crisis had tested them all, but it had also provided unexpected opportunities for growth and connection. After the children were settled for the night, Catherine and William took their traditional evening walk through the palace gardens, a routine that had become even more important during stressful periods. The quiet conversation and physical movement helped them process the day's events and prepare for whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. "I had a call from Harry's team today," William said quietly, his voice carrying a mixture of hope and caution. "Nothing direct, but they wanted to discuss the possibility of a private conversation sometime in the future." Catherine felt her heart quicken at this news. While she remained protective of her family and cautious about exposing her children to further emotional upheaval, she also recognized the importance of keeping doors open for potential healing and reconciliation. "What are you thinking?" she asked, genuinely curious about William's perspective on this delicate situation. "I think we have to remain open to the possibility of rebuilding our relationship," William replied slowly, "but any conversations need to happen with clear boundaries and a focus on protecting the children's well-being. They've been through enough uncertainty." As they completed their circuit of the gardens, Catherine reflected on how much their family had grown and changed over the past month. The children had developed new resilience and understanding, she and William had strengthened their partnership in facing challenges together, and they had all gained deeper appreciation for the importance of their private family bonds amid their public responsibilities. The media attention had largely moved on to other stories, but the lessons learned during this period would shape their family's approach to future challenges. They had proven to themselves that they could weather difficult storms while maintaining their core values and protecting what mattered most. Looking up at the lighted windows of the palace where their children slept safely, Catherine felt a deep sense of gratitude for their resilience, their love for each other, and their ability to find joy and meaning even during difficult times. Tomorrow would bring new responsibilities and opportunities, but tonight their family was strong, united, and hopeful about the future they would build together. The past month had tested every aspect of their family life, from their roles as parents to their positions as public figures. They had navigated unprecedented media attention, difficult conversations with their children, and complex emotions about family relationships that had been damaged by public conflict. Through it all, they had maintained their commitment to protecting their children's well-being while fulfilling their duties to the institution they served. As they prepared for bed, Catherine and William reflected on the unexpected gifts that had emerged from this challenging period. Their children had shown remarkable maturity and wisdom, their marriage had been strengthened by facing adversity together, and their understanding of their public role had deepened through being tested. The road ahead remained uncertain, particularly regarding family relationships that needed healing, but they faced that uncertainty with confidence in their ability to handle whatever challenges emerged. The story of their family's response to this crisis would become part of their children's understanding of what it meant to be royal in the modern world. They had learned that strength came not from avoiding difficulty, but from facing it with grace, integrity, and unwavering commitment to protecting what mattered most. These lessons would serve them well in the years ahead, as they continued to balance their private happiness with their public service, always remembering that their greatest responsibility was to each other and to the love that held their family together through every storm. In the quiet of their bedroom, as London settled into sleep around them, Catherine and William held each other close, drawing strength from their partnership and feeling profound gratitude for the family they had built together. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities to serve, new challenges to face, and new moments of joy to treasure. Tonight, they rested in the knowledge that they had successfully protected their children through a difficult period and emerged stronger as a family unit. The future stretched ahead of them, full of possibility and purpose, and they faced it together with hope, determination, and the unshakable foundation of love that had carried them through their darkest moments and would continue to sustain them through whatever lay ahead.